the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide.
Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle, draw the circle wide.
I am open and I am willing for to behold us what seems so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift
Hey, Fred Wooden here, your interim minister, and I'm standing across the street from the Village Pizza Inn, or what it was, back in 1963, when a group of folks living near here, probably many of them involved with the Arizona State University, which is just behind me, got together with Ray Manker of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Phoenix to start thinking about a new congregation. They met here over pizza and talked for some time. And by 1965, Valley Unitarian Universalist Church was born. Churches come from all sorts of things, don't they? Pizza parlors, homes, workplaces. This year is a particularly important year for Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. It's a year as we move from one chapter and one era into another. And right now I need you, if you have not already, to continue and strengthen your commitment to VUU through your financial support. I would like you, if you have not already, to go to our website, vuu.org, click on Pledge, fill out that information, and make your generous financial commitment to the future of Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation.
Good morning. I'd like to give you an update on our pledge meeting to date by sharing my screen with a slide. We are about halfway through the pledging drive, and we have so far been pledged about $248,000. This is good news, but it's also not good news because the goal is $500,000, and we are in great need of those funds. Before you pledge, we urge you to take a minute to think about your own personal connection to the congregation. Think of a time when VUU was exactly what you were hoping it would be. A time where you were excited, glad, even thrilled to be there. For example, in our pledging meetings, we've heard wonderful stories from our congregants. For instance, Diane said it has been her involvement in VUU social justice programs that made her feel excited about being a member of our congregation. By participating in the UU Day at the legislature, she said, and I quote, "I have discovered a voice and a passion for things that really mattered to me. I found my voice." For Rebecca, it's been the singing, such as you just heard from our choir. We sang Mozart's Requiem, she says, and when the performance was done, I thought, they've made me feel joy again. For Randall, it has been sharing her family's traditions with others at Sunday services. I worked together with Barb to create a Day of the Dead celebration and a service at VUU. Many other families have adopted the tradition as a result. For Toby, it was attending the faith formation classes. I met with the youth group. After the first half hour, I knew it was what I wanted. For the first time in my life, I did not have to feel out of my element when I was out of my house. Perhaps you too have found a home here at VUU through social action, music, worship, or faith formation programs, or simply through the fellowship that we share in our hearts and our minds when we can't be in person. VUU is truly a place where people can find those one and only moments. By pledging, you are helping to provide the resources to make those moments continue to happen for both yourself and others. Please give as generously as you can so that VUU can continue to inspire us now and in the future. And now we come together in worship.
Well, I was going to be outside this morning because I wanted you to enjoy the weather right outside the sanctuary. But this is Arizona, and it's a great time for starting up your weed whacker. So I came inside because this sanctuary, while it's not as glorious as the Arizona outdoors, is nonetheless a glorious place, and I get to enjoy it. We have had the pleasure of welcoming iHelp as residents, and they'll be coming back again tomorrow for 2 weeks as we all turn to. I want to for a moment, and you can look again at this house and how much of it is a house of memory for you, and how it will be a house of memory for so many who have had to live here for the past 9 months. And take pleasure and honor in the gift that they received and you gave. The time of worship is different from other times. It is a time to stop, look, and listen in a spiritual way, to stop doing things so that you can just be present. To look around and notice what is there, not what you need to do. To listen. Those things that don't get heard in the rush and urgency of the moment. Worship is to stop, look, and listen. It's good that we do this. It's good for me, and it's good for you. And so we gather our hearts right now, however separate we may be in person, we gather them in one spiritual place, and we kindle our chalice. Barbara Face will lead us in that.
Thank you, Reverend Wooden. And now please join me in saying our chalice lighting blessing. You are also invited to light your own chalice as I light mine. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice. Blessed be. And now Haley will share announcements and the time for all ages.
Good morning. Thank you, Barbara. I'm Haley Wynn, the Faith Formation Assistant here at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. If you have children in your house today, now is the time to call them in front of their device. And while we wait for those kiddos, here are a few announcements. This week's Pastoral Care Associate is Carl Anderson. You can reach them via email at pastoralcare@vuu.org. To send a private chat in Zoom, just click on their name in the message window. Please remember that the chat is restricted during prayer and meditation, as well as the sermon. So please feel free to post/chat your joys and concerns before or after those parts of the service. If you're visiting and would like to know more about our community or just Unitarian Universalism in general, send a note to our minister, Reverend Fred Wooden, or stay in the main room with Reverend Wooden and Nancy Nielsen after the congregational conversation to visit with them. If you're interested in joining our virtual choir, you may email our music director, Katie, at musicdirector@vuu.org, and I'll make sure to include her email in the chat as well. After the worship service today, you'll be given the option to join a breakout room. Today's prompt is, name a prophetic woman you have known or have known about and why. If you're new to VUU, you may choose to decline the breakout room offer and stay in the large group with Reverend Wooden. Today's Time for All Ages story is about a prophet in the Bible named Miriam.
Miriam at the River by Jane Yellen. The story of the prophet Miriam. I creep to the riverside in the soft dark of night's end. In a woven basket lies my little brother, so young he does not even have a name. He sleeps, and in his dreams, his legs and arms move as if he is swimming. I am afraid and not afraid. I'm only 7 years old. We are slaves in Egypt, and in Egypt, Pharaoh's words and Pharaoh's laws must be obeyed, even the wicked ones. But God's law is what I follow, and God's voice is the one I hear, even when others do not listen to what God has to say. I look up the water and down, and then to the hiding place I have chosen. Sedge, bulrush, papyrus, reeds, all I need to hide my brother from the Pharaoh's men, and to hide me from prying Egyptian eyes. One quick push, and the basket sails towards the middle of the reeds, where the water is the coolest. Mother has woven the basket so tightly that it does not sink, but skips over little schools of fish. Now I hide near a palm tree, sitting on my heels to wait. All that I've dreamed, all that I've seen in my mind's eye depends on the Pharaoh's daughter. I hope she is not too late. There are crocodiles in the river. There is fate. And here she comes. She commands her handmaidens to pull the baskets out from the reeds. She picks the baby out of his water cradle. I shall call him Moses, she tells her servants, for he was drawn from the water. I sneak away, quiet as a whisper, and this is the story I will tell my parents. And with it for now, we shall be content, till some day all the world will know my brother's name.
Good morning. I'm Katie Seifert, the Director of Music Ministries, and I'm happy to be with you today. Dr. Issei Maria Barnwell is a talented professor, actor, composer, writer, and singer. You may know her best as a member of the a cappella group Sweet Honey in the Rock. When I sing or hear her beloved hymn, We Are, I feel united to her, that feminine strand that we all are born from, that lives within all of us and connects us to our ancestors. There is wonder in each life, and even when we are separated and divided, we are still one. Let us sing together now this profound truth.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Ah, that was beautiful. Good morning and welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. My name is Barbara, and I'm honored to be the lay presence in our virtual pulpit today. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we are made whole by your presence. We want everyone to know that we're here for you, all of you. If you're new, if you're a longtime member, we're here for you. No matter your age or physical ability, no matter whom you love, no matter your religion of origin or whether you believe in God, we're here for you, and wherever you are on your life's journey, we welcome you to this circle of love and community. Join us in keeping our hearts in a holy place and reveling in this single beautiful day. Join us in remembering that as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And as Haley said, we offer a special welcome to anyone who is new to us and curious about Unitarian Universalism and Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. We're so pleased you're here and invite you to stay after the service and chat. Additionally, anyone is welcome to join one of our small group connection circles. These are groups that meet regularly during the month, currently via Zoom, and focus on varying topics. Each connection circle is a little bit different and the meeting times vary. The idea, though, is to get to know each other in a deep and caring way and to provide community that we're all missing by not being able to meet in our sanctuary. For more information, please send an email to our Connection Circle coordinator, Deanne McClenahan, and I'll put her email in the chat. In our virtual pulpit today is our interim minister, the Reverend Dr. Fred Wooden, and the title of his sermon is Girl Power, in which he will explore the often overlooked women prophets in the Bible who manifest a distinctly different witness for justice that deserves current attention. Our touchstones topic for this month is consolation/desolation. You can find the link to it on our website. And I can so relate, as this year I feel like we have been swinging wildly, madly between the two of them. And I'm exhausted from it all, especially the January 6th events, which has affected me so deeply that I don't really have words to describe what I'm feeling. To protect myself, I've had to keep remembering that eventually everything passes, and the best thing I can do is to stay neutral. But how do I stay neutral in the face of such immense events? How do I stay neutral when the very foundations of our lives change seemingly daily? I found an answer while I was reading the Touchstones journal, and I realized it's the gap between consolation and desolation, which for me is neutrality. Like the yin-yang symbol, there's a moment when the two blend, and it is awareness of that blending where neutrality exists. In these extreme times, perhaps a way to find that blending and balance is through kindness. It sounds simple until I realize I need to extend that openness to everything and everyone. Not in a way that is giving up or giving in, but in a way that is generous. I found such generosity in the words of a poem by one of my favorite poets, Naomi Shihab Nye. I'll share it with you now. It's called Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you hold in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know how kindness, as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the face of the world to say, it is I you have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Blessed be. Reverend Wooden, go ahead.
What a wonderful introduction to the words of offering. When you speak of kindness, Barbara, it recalls to me those words attributed to the Dalai Lama, who when asked about his religion said, "Oh, my religion is kindness." That is to say, it is what we do. Religion is a doing, not a thinking. Of course, we want our thinking to result in doing. And we'd say, well, what can giving money have to do with religion? How is that kindness? Well, because money, for good or for ill, is how we extend our kindness into the world, beyond our fingertips. When we support an organization that reaches further than our own arms, we are kind in ways that we have not been and could not be otherwise. Yes, it is our time of making year-long pledges. There is no question about that. But it is always an opportunity on Sunday to practice that commitment by giving right now. You can give, as you can see on the screen, by text. You can go to vuu.org and give right now and pledge. 2 different ways to support. You can even mail your check. And I've told people, you know, if you want to make it personal, I'll come and pick it up personally, with mask and gloves, of course. But the point is that your kindness really does change the world. And your money is how your kindness reaches beyond your fingertips into the world in ways that you would almost never dream possible. Please be kind in every way.
As we move into centering, let's all take a deep breath together. Breathing in and out. I know I needed that. Jacob's Ladder is a well-known anonymous African-American tune. The melody moves up and down the scale, much as Jacob moved up and down the ladder in his vision found in Genesis 28. However, inspired by feminist theologian Nell Morton, Carol Etzler Eaglehart created an alternative text to Jacob's Ladder, using the story of Sarah, found in Genesis 17 and 18. Her version is called We Are Dancing Sarah's Circle. Her intent was to widen the inclusion of all, for the circle dance is an ancient traditional dance that involves an entire community. In honor of history's prophetic women and the inclusion of all, let's now sing this beautiful hymn led by Jen Conley.
We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. Sisters, brothers, oh. Here we seek and find our story. Here we seek and find our story. Here we seek and find our story. Sisters, brothers, oh. We will all do our own naming. We will all do our own naming. We will all do our own naming. Sisters, brothers, oh. Every round of generation, every round of generation, every round of generation, sisters, brothers, oh. On and on the circles moving, on and on the circles moving, on and on the circles moving, sisters, brothers, oh.
On and on indeed. This is our time of centering, of prayer, meditation. And I'm pausing here, if you can look right behind me. That's something called a kneeler. And why is that in our sanctuary? Because we purchased this space from a Catholic community. And that's part of the way they pray, by kneeling. Now, chances are that's not how you pray. You may not even pray at all. But I want to lift up how we use our bodies as well as our brains when we are most spiritually attentive. Whether you're kneeling, folding your hands, raising your arms up, bowing your head, whether you are sitting on a pillow doing zazen, we are using our bodies. And our body is a prayer. That is to say, it's an action of reaching out for meaning and purpose. I want to share with you words of a woman who lived not even 30 years, Hannah Zenesh. You'll hear more about her later in my remarks. But she lived in the early 20th century, a young Jewish woman in the nation of Hungary, who lived a short but very intense life. She was religious, but she was also political. And in her own words, she captures who she is and why she lived the life she lived. And it is a prayer. Here are the words she used. My God, I prayed that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rustle of the waters, lightning of the heavens, the prayer of humanity. The voice called, and I went. I went because the voice called. Is there a voice calling you? Have you gone? Who knows? Only you can answer. But whether you do it on your knees or on your feet, with arms wide or hands clasped, a voice is calling. And at some point, you will go. And so may it be.
This next song's recording is humbled at best. It was recorded on my friend's cell phone, who was sitting in front of the speaker, not quite capturing the best of sound. Not to mention the sound coming from my mic and the keyboard I'm playing is just so-so. If I knew there would be a pandemic where recording quality would have been helpful, I would have captured this moment more intently. But it's the moment that I hope is meaningful for us this morning. Growing up, I felt less than for simply being a woman. Perhaps it was due to the less pay I received compared to my male colleagues, or through the messaging and the religion I was raised that males were the head of the household, or the simple constant referral to God as a masculine entity, and that history was his story. Right after the Women's March, when Trump was inaugurated, this song began as a heartbeat, beating in my subconscious, beating louder again when Brett Kavanaugh was sworn in. I too have stories that align with the Me Too movement, and that particular event was yet another temptation for my insecurities to say that my voice, like Christine Ford's, did not matter. It was little moments I began to see my worth differently, like marching alongside thousands in the women's marches and in protest that Black Lives Matter. Through studying texts such as Brene Brown's, where I learned it takes courage to be vulnerable, and in hearing powerful stories of ancient goddesses from various religions. I learned that my worth, my power, is in simply being here. This moment helped me to be seen, to be here, and to claim my spot in the world. May this moment, for me, the words and music of this song, be a moment for all of us where we say together, I am here, I matter. Because we have to be here before we can fully love and make a difference.
So this is a song that's been up for me lately. I once heard from Mark Welch, actually, that if you've got a head or a song that just popped in your head, it's your subconscious trying to get your attention. So I've also found it's been very meaningful for a lot of people right now, I think in our country right now, and especially what we've talked about this morning. So it's just perfectly here. And it's called Here I Am, Not Running by Daniel Nemeth.
Well, that surely was worth all that applause. And if you felt like applauding at home, what a great idea. Of course, I'm told that here you use a sign. First of all, I want to say it's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. It really is. Not just in the world outside, that is Arizona in January, which compared to Michigan in January is a really lovely day. But I mean the neighborhood that is Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation. Every week we remember who we are as a community, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'm honored to be a part of it for this brief passage on your journey into the future. Now, I said this morning, as you heard, that I'm going to talk about the Bible, which I know is a little iffy among a few Unitarian Universalists, but do not worry. It's not the way you've heard it before. In fact, you'll be hearing a lot more biblical stuff in the weeks to come, but again, it will never be exactly as you've heard it before. I'm going to talk about prophets today. Prophets are an invention of the Hebrew scriptures in some ways. And a staple image, at least from my youth, was the man in a beard and a ragged robe walking the street with the sign that read, "The end is near." Blake, can you pull up that picture? We've all seen it before. You know, you've seen that guy. When we hear the word prophet, that's likely to be the image that comes to mind, right? Looks kind of like that guy. Comes to us in some measure from the Bible, but has been used widely, far beyond it, to describe people from history. For example, the American firebrand John Brown, who led the raid on Harper's Ferry. Well, he was depicted in the Kansas state capitol like a prophet, where he and his sons were part of the Bleeding Kansas movement. Doesn't he look the part of the prophet? Bible in one hand, rifle in the other. Wow, he sure looks the part. But looks can be deceiving. Here's another fellow with a fine prophet-like beard, but let's take a look. Who's that guy? Do you not know him? That's Jack Dorsey. He's the CEO of Twitter. Not even close to a prophet, although I think he has made a sizable profit in other ways. Appearances can be deceiving. Still, the image of the rough-hewn man in a beard, blazing with zeal, predicting the future is what comes to mind when we hear the word prophet. And it's largely wrong. My hope this morning is to recover the idea of the prophet, because it is a function sorely needed now as much as any. A person who has the ability to speak with moral authority to the struggles of the time, to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, as Finley Peter Dunn once described the role of the press, which the press no longer does. One need not have superpowers to be a prophet, a real prophet. For example, how many parents out there have said, "Keep that up, young man, and you'll be in serious trouble"? That's prophecy of a domestic sort, I know, but every child knows it's true. That's a warning you best not ignore. Prophecy means telling people in some ways what they already know but would rather not think about. Climate change is happening. Telling people who don't want to hear it is a kind of prophecy. Racism is real. Proclaiming it when people don't believe it is a kind of prophecy. Economic stagnation and disparity is a danger to the republic and those who say so in front of those who would prefer to ignore it sound like prophets. These are all truths that those in power know, but they ignore it because it would cost them, well, some of their power. And just for that reason, the prophet is often ignored, ridiculed, and when they insist, persecuted. We speak of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as an American prophet, and rightly so. He fits the role perfectly, speaking truth to people who don't want to hear it, at great risk to himself, even to the point of death. He also defied the stereotype. He was highly educated. He wore a suit, not a haircloth shirt. He was clean shaven, not bearded, because he did not fit the stereotype of a prophet. He was not seen as one, at least right away. And that exactly is my point. We have to let go of what we think a prophet must look like or act like, lest we miss the message, because we do not recognize the messenger. When I began in seminary back in 1975, I was instantly surrounded by a world I barely knew anything about, and I was bombarded with new terms like redaction, criticism, and soteriology. And my wife's favorite, because she had to type it out so many times, Religionswissenschaft. By my second year, I felt pretty confident and up to date. But as the scripture says, pride goeth before the fall. And a fellow student started mentioning names I hadn't heard of before: Rosemary Radford Ruther, Mary Daly. This fellow student named Sandy was already an out lesbian, which was a lot harder 45 years ago. And she started talking about patriarchy and revisionist theology. By the time I graduated, feminist theology was getting hot, but I was now serving a tiny little church in rural Massachusetts where they had barely heard the names, much less learned the words. So I didn't have time for academic matters. One scholar, though, that I did read and continued reading was a professor, a scholar named Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza, who devoted her career to rescuing the suppressed role of women in the Bible. By opening my eyes to what was already there in the Bible, she helped me see what was already there around me, not only there, but in the rest of the world. You see, when you start seeing something over here that you thought you knew, you start looking over here and seeing things you didn't know you had missed before. Part of recovering the role of the prophet in our times is recovering it in the myths that form our culture, which in America includes the Bible. All you have to do is listen to an evangelical, and you know what I mean. I do not claim to be a scholar, especially of feminist theology, but those voices made me look again in places I thought I knew, including the Bible. Schussler-Fiorenza says, we must start with what she calls an attitude of suspicion. Women in the Bible are typically just a means to an end, an object, not a subject, clearly not as important. This, Fiorenza says, should make us question the authority of those who are claiming it. Now, that's nothing new for Unitarian Universalists, I know, but it is still new for many Christians. And it is still unsettling. When she and other scholars name the misogyny in those stories, its legacy in law and culture and custom, that insight had the effect of a prophet herself. Schussler-Fiorenza and her colleagues were ridiculed, they were rejected, and far worse. But there was another result of bringing a hermeneutic of suspicion to the Bible. They gave new value to the women who were actual prophets in the Bible, really there, often overlooked. Yes, there are women in that book who exercised prophetic power. Even though it was soaked in patriarchy, there they were. And once I knew this, it was as though someone opened one of those sliding bookcases in a castle, and suddenly there was a room you didn't know was already there. For example, in Exodus, there is this passage talking about Miriam, the woman you heard described as a child in the time for all ages. It reads in Exodus 15, then Miriam, the prophetess, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out with her to dance. Prophetess? Where did that come from? Well, another prophet later, Micah, says that she and Moses and Aaron led the people out of Egypt. Not just Moses and Aaron. She and Moses and Aaron. No, she didn't leave any prophetic utterances with her finger pointing to the sky. But she was the one who put the baby Moses in the water to be rescued by the daughter who recommended the mother to be the wet. If Miriam had not done what she did, there would have been no Moses. She is a liberator. In the book of Judges, which comes after the Torah, is one of my favorites. Deborah, if you're named Deborah, sit up straight and take pride. She's a killer. She's a prophet, named as a prophet, who leads Israel during the years after Joshua and before Saul. In it, she ridicules one of the military men around her, a chieftain named Barak. Yes, the same name as the president. She ridicules him for lacking courage when it came to battle. And she said to him, "There will be no glory for you, for the Lord will deliver the enemy into the hands of a woman." Well, that's exactly what happens. And when they go to battle, the leader of the other army flees in terror. His name is Sisera. He takes refuge in the tent of a family nearby, where he asks a woman named Yael to hide him under a rug, which she does. And when he falls asleep, she takes a tent peg and a hammer and drives it through his skull until it's attached to the ground. You don't want to mess with the women in the Bible. When women stand out in the Bible, it's because of their nerve, their courage. Sarah, the wife of Abraham, laughs at the angel when he says, "You're going to get pregnant." She knows about biology. Moses' wife Zipporah circumcises Moses in the middle of the night while he's sleeping. Judith beheads the great general Holofernes. Tamar publicly shames her father-in-law Judah and lives to tell the tale. Yes, they often use stereotypical womanly wiles. Remember, the text is written by men, but these women were so powerful, even when they were written about by men, they escape their judgment. And of course, when you're mostly powerless, you use the power you have, even if it is dangerous. Once you begin to read the stories with a fresh set of eyes, you see these women are formidable people, not to be trifled with, not to be dismissed. And there are lots of impressive women in the Bible when you start to look with new eyes. Rahab. Have you heard of the woman Rahab? She is a famous prostitute, but she understands that Jericho is going to fall, and so she hides the spies and lets them down by a rope out the wall. Michal, the wife of David, does the same thing to save him from Saul. Ruth becomes the ancestor of David because she is loyal to Naomi, even when she is widowed. Hagar is the mother not only of Ishmael, but of all the Arab peoples on the planet, according to both the Bible and the Quran. Mary, in Luke's gospel, breaks out in prophecy when she is pregnant, knowing that her child will have a great impact. And her poem is directly modeled on the prayer of Hannah, who is going to give birth to Samuel. Anna is in the temple when they bring the infant Jesus, and she recognizes the Messiah before anyone else. And then when Jesus is grown, it is the Samaritan woman, an unnamed woman, who recognizes his authority. And on the verge of his death, it is the unnamed woman who anoints Jesus with her hair that is praised over all the disciples. There are officially 7 women prophets in the Bible, according to Judaism. Miriam and Deborah are 2. I haven't even mentioned some of the others. One of them is Hannah, the mother of the prophet Samuel. There's Huldah. Who is she? Well, she predicts the fall of Jerusalem to King Josiah, and she's right. There's Noadiah, who opposes Nehemiah's ethnic cleansing program so fiercely that he fears for his life. I've mentioned Sarah, the wife of Abraham, but also Isaiah's unnamed wife, Abigail, and then Queen Esther, who saved her people by risking her own life. Chances are some of you don't know some of these names because that's what patriarchy does. It erases women. It exterminates their work. It's a little bit like the fact that the US Capitol and the White House were built by enslaved people, but no one wrote that down because they didn't count. Women throughout history have been deemed unimportant unless men decided they were. Whistler Fiorenza, whose work I've mentioned earlier, writes, "The Bible must be understood as androcentric, not only written in the words of men, but also serving to legitimate patriarchal power and oppression insofar as it renders God male and determines ultimate reality in male terms, which make women invisible or marginal." And yet, they persisted and came out of the pages anyway, reminding us that even under the most oppressive systems, those oppressed will find a way to be seen and heard. Well, this is all interesting and fun, but what's the point for you? Every week, the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson haunt me, and they haunt every UU minister, because he said that true sermons consist of life passed through the fire of thought. How do these centuries of ignored, forgotten, erased women affect you and me right now? What does it matter that these women in the Bible are better than we realized? Well, there are lots of ways, but I'm only going to lift up a few. We need to reclaim the prophetic power of women in these ancient texts, because in doing so, we liberate those texts from their captivity to men, to patriarchy, to that time. And we liberate their power to oppress. We need to claim these ancient women as being genuine prophets, genuine truth tellers, and their ways of telling us what we should know but would rather not think about. I'm no scholar, but we all have to engage in this work, and we all should. Looking back to the ancient women of Scripture, I asked what it was that caused me to think of them in a new way. What did they have in common that still applies to us now? Three things. Women prophets preach hope. They speak of extravagant hope. Hannah and Mary, when they speak prophetically, they speak to a future of justice, of equality, of plenty. Hannah's prayer said, "God raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap, seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor." Lifts the poor, she said, lifts the poor. These same images become part of Mary's song, and she adds, "God has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble, has filled the hungry with good things, and sent the rich away empty." Centuries later, we can hear that same voice in Barbara Jordan. I remember her. "What people want is very simple," she said. "They want an America as good as its promise." There's the voice of Mary. There's the voice of Hannah. These women prophets, they never go away. Women prophets preach courage. Esther and Huldah faced down a king who could have exterminated them in a heartbeat. Someone with absolute power over them, which is true for every woman in those eras. And they did it not for themselves, but to protect others. Esther denounced the plot of the prime minister Haman, and Huldah told King Josiah that his policies would lead to destruction. They didn't have to say a word. In some ways, they weren't allowed to say a word. It would have been both safer and wiser to keep quiet. But each saw themselves as having a duty to protect their people, even at the risk of their own life. Says Esther, I will go to the king, and if I perish, I perish. Every woman who gives birth puts her own life at risk for the sake of another life. And I told you about Hannah Zenesh earlier. Well, in 1943, Hannah Zenesh, 22 years old, went into her native Hungary as an undercover partisan, was arrested by the Germans, tortured, and eventually executed. And despite that, never revealed more than her name. She protected those who she was serving. Remember what her prayer said? The voice called. I went. Finally, and this may seem ironic or even stereotypical, women prophets preach beauty, not their own physical beauty. But what I mean is they convey hope and courage through beauty. Miriam did not preach, she sang and danced the hope. She used the stereotypical role of women to give hope and exhibit courage. Again, use the powers you have. Celebrating victories with song and dance is obvious, but in a world that never lacks for war and poverty, creating beauty is itself a prophetic act. A feminist reading of Abigail, who stopped David from murdering her husband, is that she is described as a surpassing beauty, but David, who was by no means a faithful spouse, not only does not demand sexual favors, but takes her advice. She stares down lust with her beauty. She is one of those portrayed in the artist Judy Chicago's immense work, The Dinner Party, which creates 39 place settings for notable women through history. The work literally makes women real by giving them a place at an actual table. Each of those place settings celebrates their unique gifts and truths. But also, let's not forget one of the great artists of our era, Frida Kahlo, the Mexican painter who spent her life in physical pain, often unable to walk, and who said when she was asked about her loss of legs, "Feet, what do I need of you when I have wings to fly?" She used the beauty of her art not only to escape her disability, but to transform it into a vehicle of truth, hope, courage, beauty. Contrast that with male prophets, or at least the stereotype, who instill fear, promise wrath, and bring condemnation. Sometimes we do need those things, but what inspires me to keep going, what moves us all to continue when the struggle goes on and on and on, are hope and courage and beauty. And it's out there in abundance if we look and listen. Every woman has a story of hope, a moment of courage, a dream of beauty. Every woman has a prophetic voice to offer if we would listen. And in these times, those are the prophetic truths that need to be heard more. In the world we share now, we can ill afford to ignore or forget or erase not a one. Yes, the prophetic woman. She is our salvation, each and every one of us. And I'll use the words of Scripture to give a last prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my redeemer. For these words are not mine, but belong ultimately to you. I now invite my wonderful colleague, Katie, to gather us into our closing hymn.
Thank you, Reverend Fred. Thank you for highlighting and reminding us of those women that had profound light. May we all be inspired, and may we honor them in this next song, I Am a Light.
This is I Am a Light by Robert Anderson, and we invite you to sing along. It's a call and repeat.
Some final words from a great woman prophet, Emma Goldman. Someday men and women will rise. They will reach the mountain peak. They will meet big and strong and free, ready to receive, to partake, and to bask in the golden rays of love. What fancy, what imagination, what poetic genius can foresee the potential of such a force in the life of men and women? I don't know, but I want to get there. Let's take another step today, shall we? Thank you for being part of our worship today, and I invite Barbara Face to extinguish our chalice as we move into our breakout rooms.
Thank you for that inspiring sermon, Reverend Fred. And now please join me in saying our extinguishing the chalice words. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. And at this time, as usual, feel free to stay for a breakout room chat. Simply accept the breakout room invitation when it appears. Alternatively, you can chat with Reverend Wooden and Nancy Nielsen by declining the breakout room invitation and staying in the main meeting. The conversation prompt is: name a prophetic woman you have known or know about and why. Enjoy.